today, Chapter 6, topic Global Energy Governance. Governance issues at a global level, right? In other words, since changes are so fast, I think past institutions and things that are happening, some gap. In other words, the current institutions, global institutions that sort of govern energy issues, do not match with the reality. So one of the issues facing countries today is how to realign these global energy institutions, right, to fit, current situation. So this chapter goes over, the top big 3 institutions, energy institutions, and other smaller regional, right, second-tier institutions. Then this chapter asks, are they up to, 21st century challenges, right? Then the sort of discussions follow that sort of what are the problems for each institution, IEA, OPEC. We talked about OPEC last class, and IEF. So these top big 3 institutions, OPEC, IEA, IEF, these are top 3 institutions. Somehow these top 3 institutions must be realigned. Okay, must be realigned because their responsibilities somehow, not efficient to manage global energy issues. OPEC, like we discussed, OPEC is mainly on oil issues, right? IEA, problem with IEA is as a consumer cartel. OPEC is a producer cartel, but oil producer cartel. But as you know, there are many issues surrounding natural gas. Natural gas is not covered by OPEC, right? Natural gas and renewable energy, how do you cover these renewable energy issues between countries, right? Although there are smaller institutions at a regional level. So OPEC, IEA as a consumer cartel, but IEA, problem with IEA is that IEA membership is so limited, right? When IEA was founded by OECD countries, right? So still IEA is run by these sort of OECD rich country sort of a club, right? But the trend today is toward energy consumption growth will be outside the OECD countries, right? Bigger increase comes from not from the OECD members, but from non-OECD members. That's the biggest trend as far as consumption is concerned. So IEA doesn't match this big future trend. How do you extend sort of the membership to include these non-OECD member countries such as China, India, right? China, India. So, and Russia, right? as a consumer. So the issue facing IEA is, although IEA has evolved to include, many different energy issues. That's a good thing, right? If you look around, IEA today is not IEA of the past. Very different. We had, officials from IEA in our meetings a couple of weeks ago, and it was very clear from him also, who is Japanese, former Japanese foreign service officer, who now works at IEA, very clear what their goals are. I learned from him what their goals are and their capacity and their skills, organizational goal, and their functional areas, very wide. IEA initially born as a sort of a oil supply disruption crisis management. That was the main goal. But IEA today is very active on many different issues, like such as IEA today is very active in developing natural gas market, developing efficient natural gas market in Asia. IEA is very much active in promoting this sort of a golden age of natural gas, particularly how to reduce sort of CO2 emissions in China and other Asia Pacific countries, encouraging them to use more natural gas, and also encourage them to use more cleaner energy efficiency, right? CO2 emission reduction. These are all, within the scope of IEA activities. So today IEA is very broad, but membership is very limited. So IEA is now in the process of extending associate membership to non-OECD countries, particularly China, India. So we are now in the process of sort of expanding the membership to include China, India. That's the biggest controversy, because the positions of China, India, Russia, although they welcome it, but they have many concerns, right? Many different priorities, different countries. So, China IEA relationship, India IEA relationship, Russia and IEA, these are all, issues on the table today. And IEF, one of big three institutions, IEA is relatively new, but IEA is a new institution that combines, unlike OPEC and IEA, IEF, International Energy Forum, bring together both consumers and producers. Right? So this is global institution where both consumers and producers get together. And organizationally, it's relatively developed, and it has an office, headquarters, right, secretariat, and annual meetings, right, ministerial meetings. So we will see, how IEF in the future will evolve, whether or not IEF will be, because OPEC is limited to producer issues, IEA limited to consumer issues. IEF is the only, right, dialogue between producers and consumers. So very important institution, but we'll see how this will evolve in the future. So I think that This will be the summary of today's lecture, and we'll get to some details of what problems and prospects for each institutions. 21st century, in terms of energy, authors argue that there are twin challenges. Okay, there are twin challenges, which are two sides of the same coin, which is climate change challenge on one hand and energy security challenge at the same time. So these are two sort of contradictory trends that we are facing. We need to sort of confront them at the same time. Right? We need to take care of air quality, but at the same time, we need to make sure that energy is, without disruption, energy is supplied, right, at the same time. Right? And this will shape the future of energy. Right? How energy will play out will depend on these two combination of how we cope with these two challenges at the same time. Right? The future energy system will depend on that. Let's get to, this is not in the textbook. This is not in the textbook. I want to introduce, to understand the future energy like a system, how the energy system will play out in the future. Let's look at some of the scenarios presented by the International Energy Agency. The IEA presented three scenarios in projecting sort of the future energy. Right? Three scenarios. One scenario is current policies scenario. These scenarios are designed by in-house economists, right? Within the IEA. This is one of the things that IEA has been promoting over the last 2 or 3 decades. As a consumer cartel, the IEA kept issuing all kinds of reports and scenarios. And current policy scenario assumes that no policy commitments are acted upon. This is the assumption behind current policies scenario. In other words, at this rate, if current situation continues, then what will happen in the future? This is current policies scenario. And second scenario, 450 scenario. 450 scenario. This scenario, based on the situation where, if we reduce GHG emissions to around 450 ppm, parts per million, right? And the goal was to limit global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius, right? Then energy future, what the energy future will be like, right? If some policies are done to meet this demand, 450 goal, right? This is 450 scenario, right? Then based on this, the IEA projected energy consumption level, demand, right? What kind of energy will be better for that situation, things like that, right? 450 scenario. So current policy scenario and 450 scenarios. So 450 scenario is the best case scenario. Okay? Current policy scenario, worst case scenario. Nothing happens, right? That's current policies. 450, best case. And this is in between. Something in between is this. new policies scenario. This is more likely, right? So sort of a middle road scenario. That's a new policies scenario. And I think the future will be more like this, more likelihood here, new policies scenario. According to new policies scenario, the future, energy future will be like this. World energy demand increases under any scenario, okay? Demand increases under any scenario, but particularly new policy scenario. This is how demand and other energy component will be like. Natural gas, on the new policy scenario, natural gas will play a central role. Okay? Natural gas. I'm not saying this. This is like a study projection by World Energy Outlook published by the IEA yearly. At the end of the year, the IEA publishes World Energy Outlook, WEO. A lot of economists, they work on this, publish it at the end of the year. This comes from that report. So new policy scenario, natural gas will be key. And power generation, electric power generation drives the demand growth. Okay, not automobiles. Okay, not industrial consumption. Power generation drives. Energy poverty will be a huge issue on the new policy scenario. In other words, many people in developing countries will be having a hard time accessing energy resources. That's energy poverty. And natural gas for transportation will increase over time. But main thing is power generation. But over time, transportation will be also important. Let's pay a little bit more attention to this. World economic growth rate, okay, on the average, 3.2% between 2008 2035. Okay? And most economic growth comes from non-OECD countries. Okay? Non-OECD countries. So economic growth rate is the basis for projection for energy demand, right? So 2008, 2005, economic growth rate will be higher in non-OECD countries. So because of that, world energy demand, right, based on that economic growth rate projection, energy demand increases by 36% between 2008 2005. So people will be using 30%, 36% additional energy, okay, during 2008 2005, and 93% of that will be happening in non-OECD countries. Okay, non-OECD countries. So OECD countries, they have used enough energy already, right? No additional energy demand growth from OECD countries, right? Additional growth will come from non-OECD countries. Right, quote unquote, growing importance of China in global energy markets. Right, this was emphasized in the IEA report, WEO, World Energy Outlook. China is important. We need to carefully watching, China. That's the message. China will be deciding on the global energy market, right? So types of energy China uses, very important, right? And energy policy, the government makes, China's energy policy, very important for energy markets, right? So every move China makes will determine global energy markets. IEA noted. In 2009, China, this was reported a lot. 2009, China overtook the United States and became world's largest energy consumer. 2009. India is also important, right? The IEA report follows with India. By 2005, China will be accounting for 22% of world energy demand. Current level, 17%. Okay, 17%. India, second largest energy consumer to 2035. And their share will be 18%. Okay, so China, India, these are two important countries. We mentioned this earlier, right? Last class. Outside of Asia, the Middle East, highest energy consumption growth. That will be in the Middle East. Okay? The Middle East will be the fast, right, rate of increase. I think this itself, right, indicates many important points for energy companies or energy policymakers, right? The message, the big message, right? Future energy demand in the non-OECD countries. That's first message. Non-OECD countries. So if you are Chevron or BP Shell, right? I think they will see this with a lot of attention. Very important in their future business strategy. So energy demand, consumption, energy consumption, non-OECD countries, right? Non-OECD, China, India, and Middle East, right? This is demand pattern. So in the future. Again, this is just projection, right? Middle East, China, India, important. But what's the importance of the Middle East? The importance of Middle East, I think signal from that is Middle East might not be able to export that much compared to the past. That's the message, right? If this is true, there will be reduction in exports from the Middle East, right? That's the message. Now, OPEC. A little bit of repetition from last class. OPEC's most important strategy is, as you know, right? Supply management. This is what we learned from last class. OPEC's main job is to manage supply, right? In the form of quota. OPEC, as a cartel, distributes quota amount, right, to different member countries, right? So in other words, almost giving an order to each country, you export this much, right? You export that much, right? That's supply management. This is the most important goal of OPEC. But OPEC faces, right, many problems because members, they want to maximize, right, its own revenues, right? So there's a gap between OPEC as an organizational goal and member countries' efforts to maximize revenues, right? There's a discrepancy. So as an organization, OPEC tried to, right, balance between these two goals. And OPEC doesn't play any role in climate change talks, right? This is the limitation of OPEC. And OPEC, I think in the future to sustain itself, OPEC must be able to reach out to these issues, right? That's the recommendation, right? That'll be good for exporting strategy also, right? They cannot disregard climate change trends as an oil exporter. So to be sustainable, OPEC as an organization, they must reach out to climate change talks. OPEC's sole focus is oil, right? And this is limitation. So to be more sustainable, OPEC have to involve unconventional energy issues. OPEC, has to have some tool, right, to manage unconventional energy issues, and also gas issues. Some figures, right? Some figures. OPEC today controls 60%. Right? This is how much they are powerful. 60% of the world's conventional, right, oil reserves. 60%, which is 33% of the global production. Right? But used to be much higher than this, right? OPEC share much higher than this, much sort of lower compared to decades ago. Right. Again, as we mentioned earlier, right? OPEC runs today something like this, OFID, right? OPEC Fund for International Development, right? So OPEC is reaching out and donating some money for some good cause. And I think this textbook offers for the 21st century, there will be three big challenges, right? These are number one, sustainability, right? Second, energy poverty. Third, adaptation, energy system adaptation, right? So to achieve these three goals, these global energy institutions, they have to, right, adapt themselves, right? Realign themselves to meet these new challenges, right? This is how this chapter is written. Sustainability, energy poverty in the developing countries, right? And energy system adaptation and mitigation, right? Due to climate change, we need to, right, restructure the system, energy system, economic system, right? In a way that we use less energy. So these three types of challenges, then based on these three challenges, then how OPEC should change, how IEA should change, right? And whether or not OPEC IEA must be sort of merged, right? Or any new UN level global energy institution, right, is needed. Right? This is the logic. Energy poverty, sustainability. Do you agree to these three big challenges? Sustainability, poverty, adaptation, and mitigation. Any other challenges for the 21st century? I mean, compared to a 20th century energy challenges. 20th century energy challenges, mostly supply, right? How to sort of make sure energy is supplied without disruption. That's the main challenge. But we have even diverse set of issues here, right? Climate change was not even on the radar screen in the 20th century. So sustainability, poverty, energy poverty. A lot of people talk about that, energy poverty. How to provide energy, access to energy to a lot of people, wide audience in the developing countries. Energy poverty. Any other issues
I think maybe
missed?
efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah. How to use
Technology, right? Technology, right. Like a more innovative, new, right, kind of technology that is much more efficient, right? Right. Energy tech. And any one of these can include maybe energy system adaptation that might include. I mean, you think of this in terms of what new problems we can expect, like in the 21st century, in terms of energy. That's another way of thinking about these issues. What potential new problems might occur in the 21st century as unconventional energy is more important, as natural gas is more important, and any other new unexpected challenges, right? Sustainable, always there, right? Sustainable. Energy poverty, maybe we didn't think about that in the past. Energy poverty is new, relatively new.
I don't know what you would call that.
Yeah, clearly, that's very urgent, right? Issues. And how do we call it? How do we classify that?
Interdependency.
How would you classify that type of? Although which is not new, right? That problem is probably not new, but still very important. Very important. I think that I want to classify it as sort of a conventional versus unconventional game, competition. Competition between old conventional energy supplier and new unconventional energy supplier, right? So kind of crisis you see over Europe may be part of this big game between conventional, unconventional supplier competition. So Russia as a conventional energy supplier, which for a long time strategically made Europe dependent on it, right? And Russia is being reduced, right, in terms of power, pricing, and many other types of power. Russia is being reduced by new supplier, right? Surrounding Canada, US, Australia, right? Unconventional type of suppliers. Right? So energy flows are changing, right? That may not be covered here as a new challenge. And I'm not sure whether that, from the governance perspective, if we see these new challenges and new crises in Europe, then in terms of governance perspective, right? From governance perspective, then do we need any new? I mean, how do we sort of transform those crises into institutional creation? Do these new crises require new institutions? In terms of IEA, OPEC, right? And how about these crises and governance structure? How do we reform governance structures, right? What are the capacities of current global institutions in overseeing, in resolving these crises? I think that's how we sort of approach these issues. Yes? What's your?
Maybe international framework to make sure every country has several sources of energy so that they can't become hostage to one source? That might be a good way to prevent it.
Diversify
Yeah, yeah. Like,
energy sources.
yeah.
Yes. I think right. Energy security 101, number one principle, diversify. Right? Always better. Right? Always better to have more sources. Right? More sources and different types of energy. Right? If you have oil, gas, renewable, right? Nuclear, the more diverse, you're better off, right? And in terms of countries you import from, the more diverse, you're always better off. That's principle number one, energy security. But how about in terms of institutions, right? In terms of having these values and goals, then think about the current structure of global governance, right? I mean, current structure where IEA, OPEC, and IEF, maybe several other APEC level energy institutions, and there are a number of other smaller ones. Then this crisis, right? These institutional structures, right? That's the goal of today's chapter, right? Is IEA better in terms of, or still good in terms of coping with this Russian versus European crisis? Or when you look at the current crisis in Europe, do we need any other, like a non-IEA, non-OPEC, maybe brand new global energy institution, right? That's governance question. How IEA can be mobilized in terms of, right, this crisis, right? That's a governance question. Or do we need, as he indicated, do we need G20 level, right, dialogue about energy? Right? Those are governance questions. And my, I think, question is, these three questions are good ones: sustainability, energy poverty, and mitigation, adaptation. But still, maybe a couple more big questions that I missed. A couple more big questions. I think number one question we need to consider in thinking about future energy system is that I think that unconventional energy, the lessons we learn, unconventional energy, whether shale gas, shale oil, will be more and more important in the future, right? But still, environmentally, socially, a lot of high level of uncertainty, right? And unconventional extraction and development will spread out, right, to every country. I think we need to think seriously about, on a global level, we need to develop some norms, common norms, or knowledge about ways in which we can safely develop this unconventional energy. Maybe technology, right, first, then other environmental aspects also. Maybe within the IEA or maybe IEF, as an organization, someone must address this issue so that every country shares information and shares technology. Right? Maybe America should open their technology, right, so that every country have access to this. And then unconventional energy development will be much more, widely spread, right? So that's one issue. I think as a globe, in general, we need to discuss. And second issue, in the 20th century, we relied on a certain like a region for energy production, which is the Middle East and Africa, right? And we are moving away from that region, right? For different reasons. We are undergoing transition from oil to natural gas, right? Probably from natural gas even to renewables. So what this trend suggests is that unwittingly we are dumping, right? We are leaving this huge, like number of countries, highly underdeveloped, which is highly dependent on raw material exports, right? Middle East, Africa, these countries, right? We need to think about, post-oil development for these countries. I think this is an urgent issue, right? Because they cannot depend on these oil exports forever, right? But they don't know, right? Without oil, how to sustain their system. They don't know, right? Maybe energy poverty, a little bit related, but technically a little bit separate issue. Separate issue. So this is something we already witnessing in the Middle Eastern region and some African region, right? So the OECD countries, IEA, again, this issue must be addressed collectively, right? So that, ways in which these consuming countries help out these countries in their smooth transition from oil dependence to, right, real economic development, right? This is, I think, issue that we need to sort of include. Now, IEA. Like I said, IEA's initial focus was on oil security, right? That was initial focus. But IEA is evolving and expanding into many different functional areas, different fuels. IEA is very active, particularly recently natural gas. Right? IEA has promoted, right, the golden age of natural gas. Right? So IEA is expanding into different fuel and different energy technology. IEA promoted the unconventional energy technology, right? And climate change, right? Probably IEA has been most active in terms of sort of disseminating information about climate change, right? Statistics. So IEA is changing from oil security to many different issues. And membership is a huge issue, right? Membership extension, mostly over these countries, China, India, Russia. Big so-called associate member countries. These are highly controversial. So IEA is policy formulation body and at the same time energy policy advisor, right? China IEA relationship. China doesn't have any interest in formally becoming a member of the IEA. because China is concerned about the collective decision system within the IEA. Particularly that the oil draw policy, right? One of the requirements for becoming a member, they have to reveal their information about oil production, everything, right? Then they have to make all this information available to the IEA, and most importantly, they have to have 90 days of oil storage, right? Oil storage in times of crisis, right? In times of crisis. So China is concerned about that. But China has recognized the importance of collective response to oil crisis situation. And China is sending officials to different IEA organized meetings. Russia, how about Russia and India? They are not ready yet to abide by the rules, again, of the IEA, as in the Chinese case. India had signed MOU with the IEA, but still not ready. But to engage these three players, very important, right, for IEA. And IEA has just extended associate membership to China, India, Russia. And in engaging these three players, the goal of IEA is to improve energy efficiency policy of these three countries, because this will have significant global influence, right? China, India, I mean, the population size, and Russia, Russia energy price is still very cheap, right? Because the government sort of, gives subsidies to energy prices. So unnecessary energy consumption is being made in these countries, right, for different reasons. So from the IEA perspective, to engage these countries and sort of achieve improvement is very important. IEA and climate change, we talked a little bit about that. So climate change agenda, IEA's role was very important. I mean, there have been substantial intellectual and policy input to the climate change agenda from IEA. A lot of statistics on these issues, carbon emissions and renewable energy, and energy market analysis, very different energy market analysis and reports. And IEA has high level of energy skills, evaluation skills, if you read these reports. The most famous economist from the IEA, do you know who he is? Turkish economist, Fatih Birol. You might read, you might see him a lot in newspaper reports. Fatih Birol, Turkish economist, senior economist from the IEA. He's everywhere about sort of all kinds of energy market analysis and future energy projections. Energy poverty.
Can you just spell his name?
His name? I think his name I think I'm right. It's Turkish, Fatih Birol. And he's famous for his projection for energy futures, right? Demand growth, market trends, right? Energy market analysis. Senior economist from IEA. Right? Big figure. And like I said, these days IEA is very active in promoting Asian natural gas market, LNG hub, these issues. So like developing a LNG hub in Asia, right? In Singapore, I mean IEA is promoting those issues. And poverty, world energy poverty issue, IEA is also promoting these issues through this famous report, WEO, World Energy Outlook. All these, right? All these come from this report, World Energy Outlook. So through these, they estimate the cost of addressing energy poverty in developing countries. But, right, we need a clearer mandate from its governing body, right? Now, finally, there's one important organization that has not been covered in this chapter, which is GECF, Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Talk a little bit about that. This organization is gaining in importance because everyone sort of talks about the importance of natural gas, right? And natural gas issues are outside the boundary of global institutions, right? No institution covers this issue, natural gas issues, and unconventional energy issues, right? But GCF, potentially, can become an organization of natural gas. Can GCF become a gas OPEC? This is kind of questions a lot of people asking. Can GCF become a gas cartel, gas OPEC? GCF had first meeting in 2001 in Tehran, Iran. And between 2001, 2008, a little bit disoriented, didn't have clear goals. I mean, GCF. There was some cooperation between member countries, but these are the members. These are the original members: Algeria, Brunei, Iran, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nigeria, Oman, Qatar, Russia, Norway, Turkmenistan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? These 11 members are founding members. But like I said, 2001, 2008, there was only limited cooperation and no clear goals. Okay? No clearly set goals. So a little bit disoriented. It was only informational organization without a secretariat, no headquarters, so physically, absent. No international recognition. Right? It was not internationally recognized. And And during this time, gas was not, right, really high profile issue still.
So the no international recognition is for this period between 2001 2008.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
That's
International recognition, what do we mean by that, right? That's important. But today, after 2009, GCF, some important work is done by GCF. They have not reached a point of becoming a cartel. In other words, they can, the importance of cartel, defining characteristics of cartel is you have to be able to control prices, right? You have to influence prices. But still, price, no control over prices for many different reasons. But there are important functions GCF are doing, like in terms of pricing information gathering. Maybe you, this chapter doesn't have it. Energy market information is very important. Oil market, if you want to control prices, you have to have systematic collection of price information, right? So that is called JODI, J-O-D-I. J-O-D-I. This is official global level price information collecting system, JODI, J-O-D-I. GCF, after 2009, became much more influential because GCF now is able to run this gas JODI system, right? This is the recognition GCF obtained after 2009.
Will countries like US, Canada, and Australia also join this forum?
Oh no, because you will see why, right? You will see why. The reason, the difficulty of GCF in becoming a cartel, again, same with OPEC, but too many members. And these two different members have different interests, competing interests. So that, important to manipulate supplies, right? To control prices. It's difficult to manipulate gas supplies. And there is no single pricing structure, right? Gas pricing system, no single pricing system, right? December 2008, GCF became full-fledged international organization, right? So they opened an office, secretariat, headquarters, Doha, Qatar, December 2008. 11 members, 70% of the world's natural gas, right? 11 members. And Putin is pushing very hard behind the scenes, right, for GCF. 70% of the world's natural gas. Main goal of the GCF is to maintain the traditional oil-linked prices. Traditional oil-linked prices, which is threatened by, right, the shale revolution, right, the increase in spot market and everything, LNG, structure and everything, unconventional natural gas. So the current goal of the GCF is to maintain oil-linked prices, oil indexation prices. So big question is this: will the GCF evolve into a cartel like OPEC? Right? So I think, in general, I think what you see in Europe today, and maybe also in Asia, is about this question, right? the struggle between conventional forces, unconventional forces. Conventional forces try to maintain oil-linked prices. Unconventional forces, right? LNG and more open pricing system. There are remaining governance questions, like I said, like an internal, post-oil development in Middle Eastern countries. Right? That's a huge issue. And also unconventional development. That's also another governance issue. And I think that's it.